Welcome. Today I will be presenting on my final data analysis project for ED 7004 on Wolfpack hour. And throughout this presentation you'll get a better feel for how we came about this program, how it runs in our school, and how we are going to move going forward. So taking a look here, Wolfpack Hour is really that way to facilitate academic success. And we got our start with this. We took a look at the fact that every year at the end of each trimester we looked at our failure rates. And for the last several years it has consistently been that our failure rates start out high first trimester and they slowly decrease as the year progresses from trimester to trimester. However, while they do decrease, they're still higher than we would like them to be. So taking a look at some of our failure rates for the last few years, in 2012-2013, we started the year with 689. Now remember, we are a school of about 1,800 students, and students take 6 classes a day. So this failure rate could be up to 6 classes for a given student. And as you can see, we dropped to 595 during second trimester and 415 during third trimester. And then our senior class graduated, we got a new freshman class, and in 2013-14, which was last school year, we started the year with 665 failures, which is down from the year before during trimester 1. And we slowly dropped where we ended last school year, third trimester, having 528 failures, which is up from last year. That being said, we also look at our MCA proficiency. As you can see for the reading, math, and science, we've dropped from 2 years ago to last year consistently. And so taking a look at all this data, we sat there and wondered, what is causing this? Was it the culture of the building, or was it something else, which could have ranged from everything from our freshmen having difficulties with adjusting to high school? Is it time management? Is it a sense of apathy? Is it a lack of motivation? Is it students are choosing an academic rigor that is outside their capability? Are they not able to balance sports with academics? Are they having a hard time getting transportation early to school, home from school afterwards, that's causing them to not be able to get any additional assistance? So with that, our principal last spring presented us with this article to contemplate an idea of something called Power Hour. And I have the link here for you if you'd like to check out the actual article. But basically this article talked about Westport High School in Ocala, Florida. Ironically, they are also home of the Wolfpack. They had noticed that they had this 37% course failure rate, and they only had 10% of their students taking part in co-curriculars. And so they decided, after a lot of thought and a lot of planning, they instituted this program during lunch. It would be an hour long, in which teachers would have 30 minutes for their duty-free lunch, and then 30 minutes of what they referred to as office hours, where students could access it for making up work if they missed it, having study sessions, getting additional help if they're struggling, also being able to just do their homework, as well as participate in co-curricular activities. And through the institution of this program and making modifications and adjustments as needed, their failure rate dropped to 3.7% after 1 year. And it has continued to drop since then. They are now below 3% failure rate. Their co-curricular involvement jumped up to 60%. And their behavior referrals cut in half, to the point where when they get new employees now, their employees want to know if these kids really are as well behaved as their data says they are. With that, we had a discussion as a staff, and we decided to vote, and we voted and said, let's form a steering committee to look into instituting this Power Hour and how it could work for our building. We then, with the steering committee, which I was a part of, we met over the rest of the spring and the school year last year and into the summer, working out how the schedule would function, logistics of how we could make this work and flow as a staff of about almost 100 students, creating presentations for staff, parents, and students. We looked at models that we found were being done locally in places like Apple Valley and Chaska, and we ended up coming up with this decision to launch right away in the fall with a week-long rollout, having it the hour over lunch. Chaska, I know, adds 90 minutes onto their day. We just decided to make it work with the constraints that we had. And we decided to launch it right away because we said, why should we put off intervening and helping these kids and preventing them from failing in the first place when that's what they need? And so we surveyed our staff and we came up with the name Wolfpack Hour. We discussed the concerns that would take care of possible issues as a staff before they would occur. And we also took those questions that staff members and parents in the community had, and we created FAQ sheets that we put out to those people aimed at those various groups to make sure that they understood that we were taking into account their questions and thinking of those ideas so that way we wouldn't have problems and we could take care of them before they would even start. Once this occurred, then this past fall, we started right away on the first day of school. We officially launched the Wolfpack Hour, and while Wolfpack Hour and our advisory program are completely separate, we used advisory as our meeting group for the first week, so that way we could go through with our students each and every day a different aspect of Wolfpack Hour, get them educated on what it was for, and really get them understanding that this was for an academic purpose so we could get them using their time appropriately right away from the start. Now, right off the bat, we had some issues, which we expected. And one of the big things is we noticed is it was primarily freshmen, but other grades as well. They weren't used to this level of freedom. Yes, our seniors have open lunch, but our other grade levels aren't used to being able to have this hour of, as they looked at it, free time. And they tried to use it for non-academic purposes. For example, one day we had students sprinting down the hallway having races. And so right away we talked to the staff, we met as a group, and we said, well, we need to take care of these issues. And in doing so, we got administration involved, and they were more than happy to do so, to assist in helping these students find a place to go to make it purposeful. Whether it be taking a look at their grades and saying, hey, you know what, I see you're failing this class, and walking them to it. Or whether it be just sitting down and talking with them and saying, you need to find some place to be, so that way you are not disrupting those of others who are really trying to make this work. And so at the end of the first trimester, we decided we were going to conduct a survey with the staff to see where they were feeling on how first trimester went. And some of the results that we found was that while we didn't get a ton of response from our staff members, we did get about 75%. We found that most staff members were getting between 0 and 10 students coming in. Now, the zeros we discovered stemmed mostly from classes that kids have a lab type class, such as small engines, where there typically isn't a ton of failure rate in the first place, plus they get a lot of work time during class. The people that were seeing more students were some of our heavier content area classes, such as math, science, social studies, and English. And from that, we also then had the discussion with the teachers who responded that they were getting lots of students as to how they were getting lots of students. We also surveyed the teachers of what they see as what students are doing when they're in their classroom. And we found out that of the students that come to a teacher's class, the majority of them, about a fourth of them, are using homework or just working on homework or just using it as a work time. We're seeing about half of them, we have a good chunk that are saying 25 to 50%. We had some that are saying 100%. And then we had a few that said nobody was working on homework. So then we looked at the aspect of what percentage would these teachers say students are there to eat lunch and or to socialize? And it was a pretty high percentage, but we also had to take into account the fact that a lot of us teachers are choosing to allow our students to eat lunch into our classrooms. And so a lot of students are coming in, they're either eating and working, or they're eating and then working, or vice versa. And so that played a factor into this as well. We also took a look at how many are there to receive help from you as a teacher. And there's a lot of students that are doing that. Almost 45 teachers said probably about a fourth of their students are doing that. And one thing that I have personally discovered since this data was taken at the end of trimester 1, students are now starting to get in where we're just about 2/3 of the way through the school year. And students are really recognizing Wolfpack Hour as a great time, especially with how busy teachers can be. So that way they're making use of this time, especially with finals right around the corner, of getting that extra assistance to make sure they understand the concepts. We also took a look at what teachers have been asking students to come, and when they tell students they need to come in, what percentage actually come. And we were saying that it was anywhere from 25 to 75% of those students actually show up. Now those 5 teachers that said 100% of their students, we started talking to them and saying, are you giving them passes? Are you hunting them down? Are you having a hall monitor go and seek them out? What is it that you are doing? And I know personally, I would say probably 60% of the students that I asked to come in actually come in. Some of them try to give the excuse of, oh, I forgot. And once we have that discussion, if you lay into them and say you need to be there, they're usually pretty good about showing up. Now, we took a look at who as teachers we felt that students passed their class due to Wolfpack Hour. And most teachers, almost half the teachers said between 0 and 5. One thing a lot of us are noticing is that the kids who are showing up to Wolfpack Hour are kids that probably would have passed anyway had we not had Wolfpack Hour. There are some students though that really struggled and made use of that time and ended up passing because of it. We looked at who saw a grade increase due to Wolfpack Hour. And we had anywhere from 0 to 10 was the majority of the answer, but we had people saying that a lot of people saw a grade increase because they were getting that extra assistance and they weren't having to worry about trying to figure out when they were going to come in. Now I know that one thing we taking a look at the why and delving in that I felt was a little bit harder to deal with was the fact that not every teacher in our building responded. And so it kind of skews the data because the ones who tended to respond tended to be ones who did see students on a fairly regular basis, whereas the teachers who may have seen a ton or may not have seen any, they tended not to always respond. So our preliminary data of Wolfpack Hour effects in essence is we take a look at those trimester 1 of this year failures. We had 634, which again is down from the last 2 years of first trimester, but it's still higher than we were hoping. So I took a look at those failures and broke it down piece by piece to really get an idea of what we were looking at. And I noticed that almost 2/3 of the failures came from freshmen and sophomores. Now I know part of that we can probably attribute to the fact that freshmen really struggled at first to adapt to Wolfpack Hour and use it for the purpose it was meant for. I know our 10th grade group is a group that came in low and struggled, and some of them are continuing to struggle because they're continuing to resist getting that extra assistance. As you can see, almost 2/3 of the failures came from males versus females, which has been a consistent factor and consistent stat for years from what I understand from talking to teachers that have been in our building for several years. And so now my focus is I need to make sure that I'm focusing in on making sure that not only females don't fail, but our males as well. Taking a look at by ethnicity, 70% of those 634 failures came from white students. Now, the big thing that I know that I have to take a look at as well is that hasn't, I'm not including in this, is to take a look at what percentage of our entire student population is white or Hispanic or Black or Asian or American Indian, to see if the percentages of failures is proportional to the percentage of students in our building that are of that ethnicity. Likewise, that would be something that we would, as a math department, I know, like to take a look at when it comes to English language students and special education students, because we know that 27% of our student population is not special education, but 27% of our failures came from those special education students. So then our next focus is, what is missing from those students' IEPs that isn't already in place that we can do to help prevent those students from failing, because they already have measures in place in addition to Wolfpack Hour, so therefore they really should not be failing. Looking at failures by subject, as you can see, almost half of the failures came from math and science, which are two of our heavily tested subjects, and almost 2/3 came from our 3 tested subject areas of math, science, and English. The other category comprises any course that is offered at our building that is not part of our 4 core classes or world language, such as FACS classes, music classes, art classes, etc. And so now, me being a math teacher, I'm taking a look at that 18% and saying, what can I do and what can our department do to help get those number of failures down? The third piece that I really wanted to take a look at too is what percentage of those failures are by particular people or per person. I saw that 1% of our failures are from students who had 6 failures last trimester, which means they failed every single class they took. We had 3 students out of it ended up being 175 students had 1 failure. And that could have been, they had something, for instance, a lot of our students struggle with our IB SL1, which is a pre-calculus class. And then you drop down to almost half, have 2, it should be almost half is 3, almost half 4, and it really does drop down half, just about. But the concerning factor is the fact that we have 4% of our failures coming from students who failed 5 out of 6 or all 6 classes, or it being that 11% failed more than half their classes. So then it's a matter of, how do we focus in on those students? Because it's just like when you have behavior issues in a building, it may look like you may have a lot of behavior issues, but a lot of times it ends up being that there's a small group that is causing a lot of those issues that makes it look like there's a lot of problems. And so it's kind of that same way where we have, you figure 3 students, that's 18 of our 634 failures came from 3 kids. And 140 some class kids, or 140 some of those classes came from kids who failed 2 classes. And so that's already failing 1/3 of the classes they took. So thinking about that, we wanted to know better how students were using that Wolfpack Hour each day. So we decided to create a QR code that leads to a check-in sheet. And that check-in sheet simply asks them, what room are you in and what are you here for? And so then that way we aren't checking in on each individual person unless of course we really wanted to, but it's more of to get a feel of how kids were using that hour. And in looking at it, as you can see, the majority of students are working on homework. They can check more than one box, so they might be eating, hanging out with friends, but also getting help from teachers, taking assessments, which we don't expect to have a huge proportion of, simply because there shouldn't be a lot of kids missing assessments out of class. And then, as we would expect, the other was a blank that the kids could fill in. And you do have some kids who choose to not take this seriously and put things in that they really aren't doing. And I have the numbers split up in the bottom corner there. Now, one thing that was interesting to me is taking a look. We tracked the number of daily responses. We launched this on December 1st or December 2nd, the second day, or the first day of the trimester, second day of the month of December. And we had over a third of our students responding. And then it dropped off. And then it spiked up and dropped off, and it's been spiking up and dropping off, and obviously the dropping off are more than likely the weekends. But as you can see, it's dropped way down. We had nobody submitting entries. Granted, we also had winter break in there, but we had nobody submitting entries for a while, even on either side of winter break, and very low entries. And so then the question was, how do we get these kids to enter our responses? So we decided to really talk to the teachers and say, please have your kids check in and get them to check in so we can have some accurate data. And so moving forward, obviously, adjustments need to continue because nothing is perfect when you first institute it. We have to monitor and adjust. For example, we initially allowed kids to eat in the hallway. Messes were being created. Therefore, we said, you know what? No more eating in the hallway. You have to be in either a classroom that is teacher approved for eating, or you have to be in the cafeteria. Another thing we had noticed was that some kids were taking and playing hacky sack in the hallway. So we said, you know what? No more hacky sack in the hallway. And we know that as we take a look this year and see how things go, we might have to place a few more restrictions on students for next year to make it work. But we're trying to figure out how to take those few students that really are a few that are not using Wolfpack Hour for its intended purpose. How can we really get them to buy in, take ownership, and want to use this and keep it? And then also, we want to conduct a reflective piece with the students at year end and really take a look at how they feel the year went. I know in talking to students really like Wolfpack Hour and they don't want to see it go away. And so it's really motivational when we as teachers can say, you know what, you need to take ownership of it and see that all your classmates are doing what they're supposed to be doing with Wolfpack Hour to make sure that we can keep it and that it's not something that's going to go away by the wayside simply because kids aren't using it for what it's meant for. And as also, we will be evaluating MCA data when it becomes available once the students have taken it in the spring. So now just kind of reflecting on this, it appears Wolfpack Hour is working, but it's really hard to tell to know if the decrease in failures is caused by Wolfpack Hour. It might be just the fact that we graduated a group of seniors and brought in a different group of freshmen. It might be that we did have some staff turnover. It could be Wolfpack Hour. It could be that maybe teachers are changing how they're doing things in the classroom and students aren't having a need to have to do it. I also have noticed, which confirmed a belief I already had, Wolfpack Hour is a good thing. It's for a variety of reasons. We, as teachers, have to be in the building at 7:30 in the morning. School doesn't start till 8:35. That's an hour and 5 minutes that we have a lot of staff meetings in the morning, whether it be IEP meetings, behavior meetings, department meetings, meetings such as Wolfpack Hour meetings, staff meetings, PLC meetings. We also have a lot of coaches in our building that after school they're not usually available. So it makes for a great opportunity for kids who want to see teachers who aren't available in the morning or the afternoon. They can still get the help that they need. It's also great because transportation is no longer an issue. They don't have to worry about getting a ride early in the morning. They don't have to worry about getting a ride home in the evening. They're there at school. There's no excuse. It's also nice for kids who are involved in sports. If they have to leave early or they have practice after school, we don't have to worry about it. It's in the middle of the day. It's early enough in the day that if students have to leave early for sports or activities, it's not going to typically be affected with Wolfpack Hour because they usually don't leave till after Wolfpack Hour is over. It's also a great opportunity that if kids miss class because of field trips, now they have an opportunity to make this stuff up instead of having to use class time or before or after school. It's also an additional place for kids who want to partake in study sessions, work on projects, or get additional help to get that without having to worry about when else they're going to do it. Plus, with it being an hour long, they can go see a teacher and work at the same time, whether it be for the whole hour or just half and half. They can see multiple teachers in a period. Now, one challenge is how can we get all students, and this is a challenge that continues to really bother me, to see this value and use it appropriate and not just see it as an hour-long lunch, because we still have students that are going, oh, it's an hour-long lunch, I can just go and goof around. We do have underclassmen that are trying to leave campus and wondering why their grades aren't improving. And also with that check-in piece with the QR code, how can I get students to do it? Because I'll have days where I will say, I'm not going to help you unless you check in. And they will still continue to sit there and not check in. And it's nice for me to be able to look at that data and say, all right, I know I had a lot of students in on Wednesday. What were they all working on, or what did they say they were all working on? That big aha moment for me is like everything. Change takes time. People are resistant by nature to change. It takes time and effort to make that change, for people to make change and seeing the value, making the effectiveness go up, and for people to approve of this and really want to make it work. We can't abandon this because we've only done it for 1 year, and just because it didn't go perfectly doesn't mean we need to abandon it. Most new initiatives you need to do for at least 2 to 3 years to see if it really has a benefit or not. We want to make sure that it's not a flop and that this isn't just something else that goes by the wayside. So we need to keep plugging forward and really working with not only the teachers that aren't putting forth all their effort with this, but also the students as well, and the additional staff members who are wanting to make this work. And I wanted to leave you with just a couple of quotes because I'm a big person on quotations. And one is from George Bernard Shaw: progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So if we can change the minds of those who don't see the benefit of this or don't see that there is a purpose, we aren't going to change anything. And that's the big first step in being able to fix this issue with failures and low proficiency. And the other one is, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. So we are struggling to get that rate of failures down. Now I realize that Westport High School in Ocala, Florida, they had a huge drop in 1 year. We have a different population of students, and we recognize that. And therefore we know we need to keep to struggle to make that progress, because we want to know that we've left an impression on these kids and we've left a legacy that we can all be proud of. And so there you have it, Wolfpack Hour in a nutshell. Thank you for listening, and have a good evening.